So we've been away for a couple weeks, extenuating circumstances, but we are back here on Shoot the Gap. I'm Jorge Edwards. This is Justin Taylor. Week 8. All of a sudden, we're at week 8, almost to the halfway point of the fantasy football season, the IDP Fantasy Football season. We got a lot to cover heading into this week. So without further ado, let's hit that music. JT and folks out there, it is great to be back. A little 6-pound hiccup just happened to fall into my lap literally that I love to death. The reason why we haven't been on air is because I've been the proud new papa here in the Edwards family household. So I've been spending time with my son and just enjoying life and just enjoying him, and it's been a blast. I'm a first-time father now, and it is it's a good thing that
Congrats, man. Enjoy it. You enjoy it. It's gonna change everything, man. People used to tell me that I was one of my last friends to have kids. I had kids when I was much older. A lot of my friends got married like right out of college, right out of high school, and had kids immediately. I had kids like a decade after them, and they're like, dude, is gonna just change everything for you. And I've been that person who worked nights and weekends my whole life, so I already had a crazy schedule, and it did, man. It just changed freaking everything. My son now is almost 11, going on 11. It's gonna be wild, man. You're gonna look back in 10, 11 years, you're gonna be like, how did that happen so fast? It doesn't seem possible how quick it goes. It's like at some days you're like, this is never going to end, and then next thing you know, it's just it's 5-6 years later, you're like, what happened? It's crazy, man. Yeah. But that's congratulations. That's awesome. Hopefully you get some sleep. Hopefully the baby gets on a regular sleep schedule. That's the craziest thing, man. My son was like good because he was a night owl like me, so we kind of stayed up and then slept together at the same time. But man, I had a couple friends whose kids just didn't sleep at all. They just never wanted to sleep, and they just never got any sleep because the kid was up like every hour or 2 hours. It was brutal.
Yeah, he was dubbed in the NICU the party animal of the NICU at night. And so the last few days we were in the hospital, and as long as we've been home, we've been doing a pretty good job of flipping him to being more of awake during the day and more sleeping during the night until today. So that's what I'm going to try and do, is try and get him back on the sleeping at night schedule tonight. But it's super awesome. And like you said, as far as like having a crazy schedule and being able to figure it all out, let me tell you, as a fantasy football content creator and brand owner and all that other stuff, I'm already used to not having a lot of sleep. So you know what? This is nothing new to me. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But thank you very much. It's great to be back on Shoot the Gap. Sorry we've been away. We are back to finish off the season, helping you get ready for your playoff push as well as your IDP Fantasy Football Championships. And we got some questions already in the chat, which, since we are in the chat already and it covers a topic that we're going to be talking about, news and notes, let's play the news and notes intro. Yeah, so Will Power, welcome back to the show, Will. He says it right here. Crazy trade today. You could say that again. Ernest Jones being traded to the Seattle Seahawks for Jerome Baker in a fourth. Do you think he plays any snaps this week? Here's the thing. Okay. Dotson and Jones have very different skill sets. Okay. One of the reasons that Seattle decided to bring on or make the trade for Ernest Jones is that they're near the top of the league in rushing yards allowed. They are just a horrible run-stopping defensive unit, especially at the linebacker position. So normally Dotson was playing middle. I think he's going to bump out to the weak side linebacker, and you bring in Ernest Jones to play that Mike role and help in run stopping. And I do think he gets some playing time this week. I think maybe he gets 60% of snaps. That's ideally thinking. I think his tackle efficiency is good enough to help produce at least LB3 numbers this week. His first week back. But from everything I've been reading from the reporters on the scene here in Seattle, it's looking like he's going to jump right in there. And you look on the flip side, one of the things that was a Achilles heel for the Titans were linebackers in coverage. Well, Jerome Baker, per PFF, was one of the best graded coverage linebackers between the two teams. And so it really is trading strength for strength here, whether you look at Ernest Jones and Jerome Baker. JT, what are your thoughts on this trade, first of all, as well as do you think he plays any snaps this week?
The first thing I thought of, and I when I saw it on Twitter this morning that they made this trade, and I hate to be negative right off the bat, but like when Ernest Jones got traded from the Rams for like literally peanuts at the beginning of the year, I was like, something else is going on here. I'm like, there is no way that they just upped right before the season and traded a guy who many, many people considered a top 10 to 15 linebacker in the league for like, I think, what did they get? Like a 6th round pick for him? I mean, it was like, what? It would just made no sense. And then the fact that he's turned around within 6, 7, 8 weeks and he's getting traded again makes me really nervous now. I was already nervous the first trade happened. Now I'm really nervous that something's up with Ernest Jones. Like,
from what perspective? Dynasty or redrafters?
Just in general. That like he's a problem in the locker room. Coaches don't like him. You just don't trade a guy has this much talent this many times this early in his career right away. I mean, is he the new Brandon Cooks of IDP? Is he going to get traded and like let go every year and be on a new team? Hopefully, if he is that, hopefully he is Brandon Cooks and he at least shows up and gets you points every year like Brandon Cooks has done year after year after year. But it is wild to me that a guy this young and this talented has been traded twice in one season, and we're not even officially halfway through the year yet. And he's already been traded twice. That makes me nervous. Now, outside of that, get rid of all the other context, whatever might actually be his personality or people not getting along with him, or maybe I'm just making that, which I totally could be making that up, but it just seems strange to me. This is a good move for Seattle.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm not the biggest Jerome Baker guy. He's been okay this year, but like they need a run-stopping linebacker. They need one bad. I mean, Dodson's not the guy. I mean, that's not his game, his forte. For Seattle, a team that you look at what's happened this year so far is absolutely in the mix, with the Niners struggling, with the Rams not looking good at all, with Arizona being up and down. They're absolutely right in the playoff mix. So I think this is a good move for them, going out and getting a guy here who, like I just said, has shown top 10 or 15 potential at linebacker. I think it's worth a shot for them. I really like the move. To me, this just feels like Tennessee is finally going, yeah, we're not good. We kind of thought maybe we would be okay, but we're not good. They trade Hopkins. They trade Ernest Jones. I mean, and you hate to see teams just give up, but I'm actually kind of respecting some of these GMs that they're like making moves and not just sitting there and going like, okay, we're not good, but we'll stick with the same guys and hope and pray that it turns around without doing anything. So I do like that part of the NFL in the last couple of years, that we actually have some guys out there making moves, willing to take a chance, where I felt like for years it was like every GM was just stuck in the same spot and nobody wanted to make a move because they were so scared that they would make a bad decision. So my long-winded, you knew it was going to happen when you asked me that question. Going back, I love this for Jones. I think he plays right away. Would I play him week 1? I usually say no because I hate that. But if you got him on your team and you don't have better options, throw him in there. There's no reason for Seattle not not to play. And again, it's not like they run a crazy cover scheme. They're not doing a crazy defense. They're like, hey, man, take your gap and then make plays. Okay, he can do that. He's a linebacker. I think he can fit in. So I think Ernest Jones can play right away.
If anything, what this screams to me, and again, tying back to what you were saying and what I was saying earlier about like, it's almost like a strength for strength, swapping here, because you look at Kenneth Murray and you look at Ernest Jones, and in terms of performances, they look pretty comparable on the season in terms of like efficiency and tackle numbers. But you look at fantasy, Kenneth Murray, according to Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, is the LB25. Ernest Jones is the 37. And it's almost like these two are kind of getting each other's way, from one being the more dominant fantasy football player for managers. And I think this kind of helps to elevate Kenneth Murray even more so, where he doesn't have that necessary competition for tackles, as we do know that there are going to be more coverage opportunities for Jerome Baker and vice versa for Ernest Jones going to Seattle. So I'm with you. Something behind the scenes smells fishy, but as far as for fantasy is concerned, like you said, I'm excited, ecstatic that he's in Seattle. And what is it with Seattle getting like great fantasy linebackers like all the time? Like they're blessed with Bobby Wagner for so many years, and Cody Barton for fantasy purposes, maybe not real NFL football, but for fantasy was great. And then Jordan Brooks was great, and now they get Ernest Jones. Like I don't know. I'm a little bit happy, but I do hear what you're saying as far as just like what else is going on here. Sticking with some more news and notes here. EJ Speed returned to practice today. What does this do? Let's say he returns to the game. Let's say he plays this week. Okay, you're one of your favorite linebackers. Linebackers had all off season. We've talked about him at nauseum, and we will continue to talk about him at nauseum until he gets the the respect and whatnot that he deserves. But let's say he returns this week. What does that mean for Grant Stewart? Jalen, is it Carlisle's?
It's Carlisle. So it's a little weird. He's a Mizzou guy, Carlisle. So yeah. I like Carlisle a ton. When they took him, I was like, oh, I love this pick. He was like kind of a hybrid in college at Mizzou. He kind of played strong safety, outside linebacker. He was more of a safety in college. But when the Colts drafted him, they drafted him specifically because they thought he could play the EJ Speed, Darius Leonard role. They thought he could play that weak side, outside linebacker, and that he would just be an athletic freak that could kind of run all over the field and make plays. Because the Colts really love to run that 4-2 defense with just two linebackers, run the dime. They love the slide. They got Kenny Moore there, one of the best slot corners in the league. So they love Kenny Moore in the slot corner. So they love to run that 4-2. So they drafted him specifically to back up EJ Speed, because they thought he could be that type of player. And if you've looked at their history there, they draft guys either from smaller schools that are like off the charts athletically, or they get guys that are like tweeners at positions and put them there. And that's kind of what they've done. They did with Darius Leonard. They did with EJ Speed. Now they're doing Carlisle. Strand played a great game. I tell you what, man, he was all over the place. He saved them. He played a great game. I don't expect that all the time from him. He's more of a special teams guy. He's a grinder. He's an effort player. He just isn't a super athletic dude. That's Carlisle. If he's healthy, he's getting that spot. And actually, he was a guy that I was going to talk about. I've written about him a little bit, in that if you're in a deep dynasty league, he's a really nice linebacker stash. I think he's a really nice linebacker stash if you're in a deep league where you can actually you got a pretty deep bench. He's a guy I would go out and pick up.
No, that's a very good point. But you look at the snap percentages going back to last week, and has been kind of the trend you've seen all season. It's been like Zaire Franklin practically 100% of snaps, and then you see EJ Speed a chunk of time, 90 and above. But you look back to the last week, then you see like the third linebacker, the fourth linebacker down the pecking order, 30%. So it makes me wonder whether or not you're going to see that same distribution of snap percentages with EJ Speed coming back this week, if anything.
Yeah, I don't think those guys are not playable. like with if speed plays, like yes, though you can't. It's gonna be speed. I think those guys really the injury was a difference. I think Stewart, because of the way the game like flow worked, they got him in, they played him there. I think Carlisle's the long term guy that you want, in all honesty, but he's not a guy. If I was picking him up, I wouldn't say pick him up and play him. No, I mean I'm like he's a stash. But it's Speed and Franklin. If they're healthy, it's those two guys without a doubt.
No doubt. Yeah, so it is going to be interesting to see what happens here for Indianapolis in the linebacking position. Heading into tomorrow night's matchup with the Vikings and the Rams, Blake Cashman is out again. While I go check on the little one really quickly, Ivan Pace to the moon there, JT. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like Pace. I was disappointed when Pace kind of like tailed off near the end of last season because I thought he was going to be just an absolute stud coming in this year. Slowed down a bit. Didn't have the start we wanted, but I like Ivan Pace quite a bit. I think he is going to keep it rolling now that he's got a chance to kind of get back in there and prove himself. I like it a lot. Jorge had to step away for just a second, so let me move on a little bit more down the list here. So Ivan Pace, like I said, really like him with Cashman out. I'd say stick with him. Troy Reader out on Thursday Night Football for the Rams. I don't love Christian Roseboom. I don't love him, but he's been a kind of a part-time guy a lot of the year. I think he ends up getting most of these snaps. So if you are desperate for linebacker play, I think Roseboom is the guy. I think you jump in, you can play him and feel fairly safe that Roseboom is going to be an okay play without Reader. Again, if you have better options, I'm playing someone else. But if you're like, oh, I'm real desperate, I got guys hurt, I have guys on bye, I think Roseboom is a solid play without Reader this week.
To answer Jamie's question in the chat, which, by the way, everybody tuning in, whether you're East Coast late at night or if you're West Coast, just getting your night started, we really appreciate it. And all the other coasts, all the other time zones in between, really appreciate tuning in. If you're watching on X or Facebook, appreciate it. If you don't mind heading over to our YouTube channel and giving us a subscribe there and a follow. We have a lot of fantasy content from many different perspectives in the world of fantasy football that we work really hard to provide the top quality content that you deserve. So why don't you head over there if you can. If not, and if you already have, well, just stay tuned and we're going to keep talking some fantasy football. We got Jamie in the chat here on YouTube.
I was going to tell you real quick, just to throw it out there, because we had some questions. We're getting a lot of questions in the chat. If you do give us some offensive questions, trade questions, I will answer you on the chat. We're not going to talk about it. We won't bring them up on the show. I will be happy to answer in the chat. So keep throwing those trade questions or anything you have offensive wise in the chat. I will answer those. But if you have defensive questions as trade starts, those types of things, if you throw those out there, me and Jorge will talk about those up. If not, love the questions no matter what they are. But offensive questions, I will answer in the chat, just so everybody's has a heads up.
I like David here in the YouTube channel already subscribed and muted the NBA for your show. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Jamie in the chat. Who do you like better rest of the season? Jermaine, Pratt, Robert Splain? Short answer for me is Pratt, but I understand the Splain narrative. But we'll get into a little bit of that when we get into Money and Mirage. So stay tuned for that. David, let's get to your question here. Lost Paulson Adebo and Jalen Watson, need a cornerback for the rest of the season to go with Taron Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Rasul Douglas, Brownlee, Benford, Horn. Any recommendations? So based off of the names that you're throwing at us right here, I would assume that this is a fairly deep league and or large league. Off the top of my head, that is a great question. I mean, you have a really good bench here. I don't know whether or not I'm kind of curious as to what your other position situations are. because for cornerback, do you need somebody? I guess it depends on how many quarterbacks you're starting. JT, anybody that jumps off the page for you, cornerback wise, that you may want to give David some advice on?
I'm looking through who he's got on here. Gordon has been picking it up there. He's been playing more of the slot corner spot for the Bears. So I do.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Oh, all these corners he's mentioning right here are what's available. Okay, I'm sorry. I read that incorrectly. Taron Johnson's back healthy with the Bills. I think I'll go Taron Johnson out of all these cornerbacks that are listed here. I apologize. Sorry, dude.
Yeah. So that's what I was looking at. It's like, lost the tough one. Need one for the rest of it. Go with. I would say Taron Johnson first. I would say Gordon second. Those would be my guys. Gordon's getting a little more PT in there. If you need those would be the guys I would take. Also, Tyreek Stevenson for the Bears. He doesn't play slot corner, but man, he gets a million targets on the opposite side of Jalen Johnson. So it's like people go after him all the time. I have Tyreek Stevenson in quite a few start cornerback leagues where you got to start a corner, and he scores consistently pretty well. He was banged up before the bye week, so I'd make sure that he is available this week if you're going to pick up a play if he's out there. I like him. Taron Johnson would be my number one guy in Gordon. And I feel for you on the loss, Debo. He was playing freaking phenomenal this year. He was awesome for IDP purposes. So big loss there.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. So thank you very much, David. Jamie, what can we say, man? This is my favorite IDP show around. Way better than the NBA. Yeah, no, you're right.
Totally agree. I just did my NBA. I'm in one NBA league, and I have to be honest with you. I had my draft on Sunday. I was doing it as I was watching the Steelers Sunday night game, and I was a little bitter that we were doing the draft in the middle of the Steelers game. I tried to get them to have the draft earlier, but that didn't work. And I have to say, I did absolutely zero prep work for my NBA draft. I mean, I didn't read a single freaking article. I literally looked up what are these auction values, and that was the extent of my draft. We'll see if I end up with a decent team or if my team is total garbage by the end of the year. When I got done with it, I felt like I was in a pretty good spot. It was an auction draft. I felt like I liked my team, but I kind of like the NBA, but I don't pay super close attention to it. So we'll see what happens.
David says Gordon has finishing not practicing. Even more reason to go get your Taron Johnson.
Yes.
To your comment though about the NBA fantasy draft, you know what I think happened with you during your draft? Do you remember the scene in Old School, the movie, where it's the debate part of the show, and then Will Ferrell, aka Frank the Tank, is like, no, I got this one, and then he spews out this amazing take and
absolutely
is like, I got nothing. That was perfect.
Yeah, but I blacked out.
You blacked out. That's exactly what just happened with you with your NBA draft.
I just blacked out. I was like, what happened? I was like, what? Is my team good? I was like, is my team good? Is it all right? What happened?
Exactly. One more tidbit here to talk about. Devin White signs with the Houston Texans. Didn't really do anything of note in Philadelphia. It's kind of surprising.
Dude,
here we have
is
4 years ago, Devin White was elite. He was elite 4 years ago. What happened?
Exactly. That's why I'm like, was there some injury we didn't know about? Something that just knocked him down a notch. It was just he came out gangbusters his rookie year. He was making sacks, fumbles, passes, defense, interceptions. He was just all over the place, and he looked amazing. And then he just fell off a cliff, and it's surprising. I mean, Devin Bush on the other side of things had the knee injury. He looked really good as a rookie, and then it was just all downhill after the knee injury.
Right.
He just never seemed to really get back. I don't remember that happening with Devin White. Maybe I just am missing it, but like I don't remember him having any kind of major thing that happened. It was just like he just fell off a cliff out of nowhere.
And, it's you take away Tom Brady from that Super Bowl, Devin White should have been the MVP. Just because of versus Kansas City that year. I mean, that's how elite he was. And he goes to Philadelphia. And then again, I don't really blame. I kind of want to give him a mulligan for Philadelphia because for Philadelphia, they rotate players so much. It's like finding the consistent person to fit everything that you want them to fit is very difficult for defensive players who go to Philadelphia. Now, Aziz Al-Shayer, Aziz Al-Shayer, excuse me. That the name I just said accidentally is somebody that I will be talking about a little bit later, so stay tuned for that. But Aziz Al-Shayer, he didn't play last week. This is kind of going around the interwebs. This is a potential somebody who's going to take his place while he's still injured. For fantasy managers out there, it's bye week season. Players are dropping. Unfortunately, injuries are a part of the game. Is Devin White somebody that you think you should even bother picking up here at this point and having on your bench for redraft purposes? Or are you just like, I'm good?
He, to me, in redraft, I don't want any part of him. If I'm in a deep league, which I'm in a couple deep IDP leagues where, there is no linebackers on the waiver wire. I mean, they're stashed. I would pick them up and stash them. For dynasty purposes in a deep league, but I don't want any part of him in a redraft. I really don't.
I like Will here with Devin White fell off the cliff like Rashaan Evans. That is true. David's like Neville Hewitt got me the win last week, picking him up in all my other IDP leagues. Gotcha. All right, Jamie, you mentioned the name Jermaine Pratt, and he is exactly who we're going to be talking about in our next segment. Let's get to some money or Mirage. So how this works is very simple. We're going to give a take, and we're going to back it up with analytics or just talking about the performances that some of these players have, and we're going to ask you, is what they're doing on the field or not doing on the field is it money or Mirage? So let's get to the first one here. Jermaine Pratt, to this point of the season, using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, is the linebacker 2 overall with an average of 16.3 points per game. His fellow linebacker teammate Logan Wilson is the LB12 on the season, using the same scoring settings, averaging 12.8 points per game. Money or Mirage, JT. These two linebackers are the best tandem linebackers in all of IDP Fantasy Football this year.
This is funny. I saw that you had typed up this Money and Mirage question, and when you were gone, me and Nate did a show together, the Shoot the Gap show, and I actually asked him about whether he thought, and it was a similar question, not exactly the same, but I asked him, I said, if you said it was Money or Mirage, would you take Jermaine Pratt as top? I did too. I said top 5 or top 10 linebacker for the rest of the season after his really good start. I was like, do you think he finishes top 5 or top 10 overall for the year? Him and I both said money. We think that he actually is going to keep it up. He's going to have a great year. He's going to stay in the mix. And so when you bring this one up, I'm like, oh, I love it. So there's a couple reasons I love it. I love it first because he's playing out of his mind, and he is so much cheaper than like almost anybody else with his production right now. People still don't believe in him. They still don't believe in him. It's wild to me. Logan Wilson's still the guy everybody wants, which I understand because he's been super productive. Right now, these guys, if EJ Speed was healthy, to me, it's a battle between EJ Speed and Franklin and Wilson and Pratt. And here's why. It's a battle between those two groups. And the reason why is both defenses are terrible. And both these guys are on the field all the time. They are making tackles constantly because their team is bad and they're on the field constantly, giving them, which is the opposite of everything you think defense. I want to have a great defense. I want to shut down defense. Well, if you shut everybody down, you're not out there for very many plays. It's harder to get points. When you're on the field constantly, you're just racking up tackles, you're racking up plays. And that's what both these groups are doing. So right now, because of the EJ Speed injury, I'm going to slightly lean Pratt Wilson. But to me, if EJ Speed's healthy, they're my number 2 IDP linebacker group behind the Colts group. And that probably is my Colts fandom slightly coming through, but EJ Speed and Franklin were both top 5 in the league in tackles until Speed got hurt last week. Before that, they both came in. I think they were number 3 and 4 in overall tackles, somewhere in that range. So there's my little half answer. Yes, I love them. I don't think they're the number 1 unit. I think they're number 2, but I do think they're money.
So I'm going to say that they are okay. No, that's okay. I think it's money, and I think they are the best linebacking tandem for IDP purposes, because whether it's a point per game average way you're looking at it or a total point per game way to look at it, these two are on the field. EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin, had Speed not missed any time, then I can get the argument there. But I think when we're thinking about it from like a fantasy points perspective, Pratt and Logan Wilson just are doing it at such a high level, tackle volume wise. And you look at the division that they're taking on, the AFC North, a very run heavy division, which is great for run stopping linebackers, as well as, linebackers that can play in coverage as well. So, if EJ Speed had not missed any games, I would say that this is a Mirage take, and it is the Colts tandem linebackers that you were just describing. So agree to disagree. So we need a third person here to tell us what you all think. So if you're in the chat right now, who would you rather have, the Bengals linebacker tandem or the Colts linebacker tandem? Drop that comment in there and we'll read it on air, and we'll break down who's right and who's wrong based solely off of that. And with that, let's go to this person in the chat. I love the name Tarzanax. I hope I'm saying that correctly. That is,
dude. Is that a WWE wrestler? Like that feels like it could be right? Like a badass WWE name, like Tarzanax. Like coming out. Like I feel like it'd be badass.
He should come out like one of those like what is it for Halloween? People dress up as the Tyrannosaurus Rexes in like the suits where they just like they're wobbling.
It's like wobbling like everywhere. Yeah.
Scaring kids left and right. Exactly. He says Sherwood, Barton, Jordan Brooks, EJ Speed, Van Ginkel. Who sits this week? Well, you're not.
He says just sit one. He said he just pick one. If Speed is hurt, you're obviously sitting right. Speed.
But even his first game back, if he plays, you think he plays a full complement of snaps though?
It'd be interesting because when he's played, he's basically played damn near 100% of snaps. So, yeah, I always say this, and I feel like I just repeat myself all the time, but I'm always weary of guys coming back from injury and just immediately throwing them in the game. I know they're pros and like they probably wouldn't play him if they weren't 100%, but I just always get weary. And the only thing is, if he plays 100%, I mean, are the Texans not going to pound the freaking rock in this game? I mean, Mixon had 30 carries against them in the week 1 game. I mean, they absolutely ran the ball the whole time. I need to look at what he had. I'm going to look it up right now. I'm going to look up week 1. You think about this, I'm going to look at week 1 tackles for him in the first game, because it was a ton, I want to say, in week 1 when they played Houston.
So while you're doing that, let's go back to in the chat and let's see who people are voting for, Bengals or Colts. We got Jamie, Bengals, Tarzanax, love that name, Colts. Jamie again splitting the difference. Who is splitting the difference here? Will Power is splitting the difference here. Colts by a slim margin, but I own Speed and Pratt, so I'm good. You lucky son of a gun. Congratulations.
Yep, nice. Very nice, Will.
We got David in the chat here saying speed practicing in full today.
I just found the tackles. 8 solo, 2 assisted, 10 total tackles week 1 against Houston.
I want to say Brooks, to be honest with you.
I do. I kind of want to say Brooks too, even though I like Brooks. I've got him on a couple teams. I've been playing him all year. He's been a little inconsistent. He's had some really nice games, some bad games. The only thing that I do like about him is the Cardinals have been super inconsistent on offense, but really James Conner has been like that whole team. I actually just got in a little discussion on X today with Ray GQ about how Kyler Murray, if you are watching the film and you're watching Cardinals games, is not playing well right now. Like he's not playing good. Like he's really not. He's one of the few quarterbacks not taking a lot of heat for playing badly this year. He is not playing good. I mean, he is missing wide open guys all over the place. James Conner is absolutely carrying that Cardinals team. He's been getting nonstop carries. That's the only thing that makes me kind of want to play Brooks. I mean, you're looking at outside of the Green Bay game where they got way down. Connor has 16, 21, 9, 18, 19, 7, 19 carries.
Right.
Like Connor has been getting a load of work, which and I think another low scoring, ugly game between Miami and them. Oh, that's tough though. What's your feeling on Sherwood? Let's just throw this. I know we're taking a long time on this, but what's your thought on Sherwood with Mosley kind of working his way back in? Because I got Mosley in quite a few leagues.
Yeah. So if I had to rank these, from
let's pull it back up so everybody sees them again real quick. Here, I'll pull it back up. There we go.
So if I had to rank these from worst situation, worst. How do I phrase this? From worst to best, in terms of options to sit, or you get what I'm trying to say, folks. It would be Sherwood, it would be Brooks, then Sherwood. So I wouldn't sit Brooks, then I wouldn't sit Sherwood, then I wouldn't sit Barton, even though he had a hell of a game last week. I wouldn't sit Speed, and for me, the top of the top here in this list here is Van Ginkel. Van Ginkel is my guy, like, and we'll get into him actually in the next Money Mirage question.
He just keeps making plays, man. Jeez.
I know.
Like every week, it's like he comes out of nowhere and makes a play. This one's tough. That's a great question, man. I'm glad you have all these players. I'm glad you're loaded with IDP guys. This one's tough. I could, maybe Brooks is the guy there, or I go for me. I'm leaning Brooks or Sherwood. Who does Denver have this week? I need to look at that real quick. Hold on, I'm pulling.
Denver has Carolina, I believe, if memory serves.
Oh, they want to run the rock. They want to run the rock too.
Yeah.
Jets. Ooh,
this is New England.
Jets against New England. New England has not been able to run the ball at all. It's been the Drake May show the last 2 weeks. If I'm going just matchups, Sherwood would be the guy I would sit, but he's been good this year. He's been good.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Damn, that's a tough one.
All right, but let's just say you went Sherwood and I'll go Brooks. And
okay, hey, split the difference. Flip a coin. Tarzan X. Flip a coin there between me and Jorge, and come back next week and tell us who was right and who was wrong.
Exactly. All right, let's get into our last Money Mirage of the day. Money or Mirage, out of all the NFL defensive free agents that switch teams this year, Andrew Van Ginkel will finish as the best one for IDP Fantasy Football by season's end. Is that a money take or is that a Mirage?
Oh, give it to me again. I'm sorry. I'm reading and answering chats. My bad.
No worries. Out of all the defensive free agents who switched teams earlier this year, out of all of them, Andrew Van Ginkel will finish as the best IDP defensive free agent of all. More than Daniil Hunter, more, insert name. For me, it really comes down to the two biggest ones were him and Daniil Hunter. Like,
yeah, Dude, I like Ginkle. Here's the thing about Ginkle is like, is he going to finish number 1 IDP fantasy points? That's going to be debatable. Is he the biggest impact IDP guy? I really think he's the biggest IDP guy. Ginkle has just been all over the place for Minnesota. He just seems like every week he's the guy. He's in the middle of a huge play, making a really nice move. So I'm going with Van Ginkle here on this one. And then as Jorge has to step away, I was actually going to type out something here in the chat, but I'm just going to answer it since Jorge had to step away. Brian, I'm going to pop up your offensive question here. He just asked about a trade. He says, thanks. It's redraft. Lineup is Daniels, Brees Hall, just absolutely loaded. He traded away Bowers and Pickens for Brees Hall. I Dynasty, I want Pickens and Bowers, but I like the move there, Brian. So thanks for the question. Thanks. I like getting Brees there in redraft. I think it's a smart move, and then making the move and trading to get getting Ferguson to replace Bowers. Since you made that trade, you got a pretty loaded roster, nice. So Pickens is worth getting rid of to make that upgrade at running back. I think you made the right move. Brian, absolutely love those trades. Sometimes you got to be aggressive, and those were aggressive trades, and I like them.
Willpower in the chat saying, is Andrew Van Ginkel, is he into the discussion for Defensive Player of the Year? He keeps this up, he will be.
I tell you what, there's a lot of Vikings players that are in discussion for Player of the Year stuff if they keep going the way they're going. I almost asked you a question and then I changed my mind because it was an offensive question and I was like, let's not even go there. I'm gonna make us do another 3-hour show if I keep up with what I'm doing here, Jorge. So I gotta zip it just a little bit and we gotta stick to the IDP talk.
Yeah, if we do a 3-hour show, this door is gonna be kicked down by a flame breathing wife of mine.
We don't want that. Yeah, we don't want that. Hey, we're on a mission. We got a certain amount of time we got to stick to. We don't want to get kicked off after finally getting back on the air after a couple weeks. So we got to stick to it. We got to stay with the program.
But shout out to my little guy Nathaniel Dean Edwards over here holding down the fort, aka Natty Dean. Quiet as a peep show. Love it. He's getting some rest. Also love it. All you dads out there who've been through this, you know exactly what it's like. And speaking of what it's like, let's get into, folks, what is the most important thing you should be taking away from these shows is who the hell are you playing and who are you fading this week in fantasy football? All right, so we're going to go position by position. Now we're taking this from a 3-position designation. What does that mean? Unlike a 5-position IDP designation where you have safety, cornerback, linebacker, defensive tackle, defensive end, we're only going to do it from a defensive lineman, linebacker, and defensive back point of view, as that is one of the more common ways that people play fantasy football. But if you have a cornerback specific question or a defensive tackle specific question or whatnot, shoot them in the chat over on YouTube. We'll be able to answer them. We wish you could shoot them in the chat on Twitter/X, but they don't give you that option. So here we are.
We got to start working Elon over. We got to work Elon over after the election. We got to get him fixing that.
Willpower says, hit that like button, guys. Yes, thank you very much. Please hit that like button and subscribe wherever you are following. And then don't forget, folks, all of our shows, whether they're Dynasty, Redraft, DFS, Waiver Wire, college betting, NFL betting, just general shows and general shows out there. One, you can find all of them if you subscribe to the Fantasy and Frames podcast. They're all labeled. They're all broken down by show type. Whether you listen on Apple or Spotify or wherever, the Fantasy and Frames podcast, you can find all of our video content in audio form there. You can also head over to our YouTube channel and find our videos there. As well as we take little short snippets of our episodes here and put them on our TikTok channel. We're really growing our TikTok channel. We really appreciate you guys helping out over there as well. The more you guys help us out, the more fulfilling it gets to us to keep putting out the great content that all the content creators here at Fantasy and Frames put out each and every week. And with that, let's get into the defensive line position. How do you want to do this, JT? You want to do play, your play, my play, your fade, my fade, or you want to
let's do that. Let's do plays. Let's do both plays first, and then both fades.
Okay. So okay, let me start off here with my play of the week. Rostered according to Sleeper, and as we've been finding out a lot lately here at Fantasy and Frames, what my app says for roster percentages could very well change from what your app says for roster percentages. Sleeper is really finicky like that. But for redraft leagues, not for dynasty leagues, Dante Fowler is rostered in 0% on Sleeper. That's what it says. That's what it's telling me, and that's what I'm telling you. Fowler, who's coming off of an impressive Week 7 performance, saw him post a win rate and tackle rate of 27.3%. Now, if you're following us over at fantasyandframes.com, aka the thing that started us all here at Fantasy and Frames, where you can find out all of our articles for waivers, for DFS, for redraft, for Dynasty, IDP, you name it, rankings all over there, award-winning rankings. Like, seriously, check out our website, check out all of our articles. And one of the articles I want you to check out is our Week 8 IDP waiver wire article, where the godfather of IDP this season is gracing us with his presence. And we love Gary Davenport. Thank you so much. In his IDP article, he was talking about Fowler, which amongst the many things he was talking about in his article, look, it's been a situation where injuries have just piled up for the Washington Commanders along that defensive line. And Fowler has just been playing lights out. He had an amazing week last week against the Carolina Panthers. He had that touchdown, or he had that, was it a fumble, or it was like I think it was a fumble return and a touchdown.
He got the most ridiculous play. They were running, and he the quarterback turned, and he tried to throw like a screen pass, and boom, hit Fowler right in the chest, and he just ran that sucker back for a touchdown. I do want Gary, great pick by Gary in the waivers. I do also want to say that in my IDP Plays and Fades article, I said to play Fowler last week. I said to play him. I said if you didn't pick him up yet, pick him up. Gary said pick him up. If he's on your team, play him. Bam, he crushed last week.
Well, you just let the cat out of the bag, because I was about to say tomorrow, make sure you tune in to fantasyandframes.com where JT.
This one.
Hold on. No. You deserve your cake here, and you're going to eat it. Goddammit. Here's the fork. Get ready for it. He puts out our IDP plays and fades for every single week. This guy is a machine. JT has more of a crazy schedule than I do, which is fantastic. He puts out fantastic IDP content. You all really should be paying attention to JT and following him on X at JT Orange. And make sure to check out our IDP Plays and Fades that drops over at fantasyandframes.com tomorrow, aka Thursday. But with that, Fowler, here's the thing. Fantasy Sixpack, who Joe Bond, really good friend of ours here at Fantasy and Frames, his site put out something that's very rare in the IDP fantasy space. And that is, if you go to the Fantasy Pros, you could find fantasy points against, and you can rank, you could find out information as far as which teams give up the most points to wide receivers and running backs and quarterbacks and blah, 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 blah. His site does a really good job of breaking it down in terms of which teams give up the most points to linebackers, defensive linemen, defensive backs. And with Washington taking on the Chicago Bears this week, Chicago is allowing the 10th most fantasy points to the defensive lineman position. And it really comes down to snap percentage. As long as Dorrance Armstrong doesn't come back and playing a full complement of snaps, it really is the Fowler opportunity that you have. Again, it's snap percentage based, but you saw the efficiency, 27.3% win rate and tackle rate. Normally, folks, when you're thinking about, and for those who are not stat inclined, which I totally get, okay, when we're talking about elite levels of win rates and tackle rates, and what does a win rate mean? It means you can beat your offensive block. And tackle rate, which just means how often you're able to make a tackle per snap that you play on the field. This is there are elite linebackers who did not get tackle rates of 27.3%. It is amazing. Their pressure rate is high. Just give me all the Dante Fowler this week. JT, who is your play for the defensive line this week for you?
I will say too, people forget Dante Fowler was a super high draft pick. I mean, the guy was a stud coming out of school. So it's not like this guy just absolutely came out of nowhere. He's been trying to kind of put it together. But I love Gary said pick him up. I love that I hit that when I said play him last week. I love that you put him on here as a play again because I think it's a great move. I absolutely love it. My play for this week, we know he has talent. We're just waiting for it to show up every week. Jalen Carter, former Georgia Bulldog, for the Philadelphia Eagles. Finally, we saw the breakout week last week. I think it's coming. Put together 4 tackles, 3 solo, 2 sacks, 79% snap share. If anybody's been out on Jalen Carter and he's been out there in your waivers for some crazy reason, you need to go get him. There's no way he should be available in any kind of defensive tackle league. If he is, oh my gosh, I just race to get him. But I think he, even as the interior guy, usually interior guys, we don't want to play those guys. We want to play guys on the edges that can get rushing, but he is that prototypical interior guy that can rush the passer and still make tackles against the run. I really like him. I still think part of me is upset the Bears traded down and didn't get him and they let the Eagles have him. I think he starts really turning it up. I really think he was a young guy coming out. We knew it'd be just a little bit for him to kind of get used to the pro game. I think he's ready to turn that corner. I think Jalen Carter needs to be in your IDP lineups.
Folks, if you have allowed Jalen Carter to be on your waiver wire in your fantasy league, punch yourself in the junk.
I know. I was doing a little searching today, and I was actually a little bit surprised that he was available in some leagues, that he wasn't higher owned. And it was like, I was like, what? And I understand. I play in a lot of defensive tackle leagues where a lot of people play in just defensive line only leagues. So like he's kind of mixed in with those other guys. So sometimes those interior guys people forget about.
Right.
He's a guy you got to have. Yeah, I don't care where he plays. He doesn't play nose tackle. He's a guy you got to have.
Now, I say punch yourself in the junk, but also get a nice pack because you can still
take care of yourself after you feel the pain and then recover. Yes.
Yeah. Well, not most importantly, recover. And while you're recovering, while you're holding the ice pack with one hand, with your other hand, add him to your roster. Add him to your roster is all we're saying. Anyhow, let's get into our fades at defensive lineman this week. And this hurts. This hurts for me to say because he has been, I'm a fan of his since down the stretch last season, had 7.5 sacks last season. I thought he was going to have tremendous upside, but it hasn't really been there, or at least it hadn't been there until this past week. And I'm talking about Yaya Diaby, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 3% rostered on Sleeper and redraft leagues. Look, like I said, coming off an impressive performance where he saw 5 solo tackles, 1 TFL and a sack on Monday Night Football versus the Baltimore Ravens. He faces the Atlanta Falcons this week, the tackles of the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons on the season, believe it or not, have allowed the fewest sacks to opposing defenses with just 6. Now, while Dalby has had the highest quarterback pressure frequency amongst edge rushers on the Buccaneers, he's by far their best edge rusher in terms of like applying pressure. That value is a 16.3% pressure frequency. When it comes to his sack conversion rate, he's only putting out 7.1%. So he's getting the pressures, but he's not really converting them into what you want, which are sacks, which are going to help you from a fantasy perspective. This low efficiency that you've seen over the course of the season, despite this one, game where he went, Yaya Diaby, Yaya Diaby. I'm a little bit weary about him against this Falcons team. And to be honest with you, when I read that the Falcons offensive line has allowed the fewest sacks amongst everybody in the NFL, that blew my mind because I could have swore I've seen Kirk Cousins like fall down or get sacked like a bazillion times, but apparently this was just a nightmare that I had, not real life.
It seems like it though. It seems like he's getting pressure all the time, but I think the issue is he's throwing the ball so much that you assume that he's going to get sacked a lot, and he's taken some pressures. He has, but I think it's just because he's thrown the ball so much. So I agree with you. When I saw that stat, I was a little bit surprised. I was like, man, really? I'm like, really? I was like, it seemed like this would be a better matchup for teams just because how much they throw, but it's not as good of a matchup as you'd think it would be on the outside looking in.
Who do you got for your faded defensive line?
So my fade here, a defense that's playing fairly well, but a guy that's got a pretty nice name. I'm gonna go in another interior. I felt like I talked about an interior guy to go with my play, so I'm taking another interior guy as my fade. Nnamdi Matabuke from the Baltimore Ravens. He was a name that people kind of really threw a lot around during IDP circles in the offseason. It's like, hey, you got to get this guy. He really showed out last year. Really kind of you felt like, okay, he's getting it together. He's hitting his ceiling, and this is a really good defense, and he's gonna really be that pass rusher from the interior for them. That a guy that he showed he can get double-digit sacks rushing from the interior last year. So he's a guy I liked. I have him on quite a few leagues. Not gonna lie, he was a guy I looked at and I said, oh, I'll take him when he fell in a couple of drafts. Even though their defense has been good in Baltimore, he hasn't been great. He has one double-digit Fantasy Pros performance this year. One is all he's got. He's getting a 72% snap share, so it's not like he's not on the field. He's just not getting consistent pressure. He has only 2 total sacks on the season, and that's 1 full and 2 half sacks. That's all he's got, and he is really struggling to help with any kind of tackle metrics. He's been basically, other than 1 or 2 outlier games, he's had 1 to 2 tackles total in most performances. He's a guy that if you've been looking to get points and you thought he was going to be a source of some nice IDP points on your D line, he just hasn't been that guy this year. They're getting all the pressure from their outside guys. Van Noy, their outside linebackers, even Simpson's been getting some pressure. It's been one of those things where it's really been the linebackers for the Ravens, not the D line, that have been the guys getting the QB this year.
100%. 100% agree with you there. All right, let's go to linebackers. Let's go for my play. This may be cheating. In fact, I'm really sure it's cheating. But then again, when I look at the fact that he's only rostered in 30% of league, 37% of leagues on Sleeper, is it really cheating? I'm going with Ivan Pace Jr., the LB10 and Fantasy Pros linebacker, point per game scoring with an average of 14.7 points per game. Last week, he played 98.3% of defensive snaps with Blake Cashman sitting out due to injury. He had a tackle rate of 12.3% for a tally of 10 total tackles and 1 sack. The next highest linebacker snap percentage was that of Kamir Grugier-Hill with only 17%, a.k.a. we know how this Vikings defense likes to run outside of the defensive line. It's primarily, 1 linebacker and then 5 defensive backs, just, 3 safeties, Harrison, Metellus, and Bynum. Per Fantasy Six Packs IDP points against database, the Rams, who they'll be facing tomorrow night, allow the 3rd most IDP fantasy points using Fantasy Pros scoring. I don't like 34%. Like if he for those leagues, okay, that he's available, just count yourself just so lucky that you're in a league where you could have such elite linebacker talent available to you there. If you are hurting at linebacker and he's available, and you're like, well, he's only projected to get me like 9.9 points out of the other guy who's projected to get me, 13. Take Ivan Pace Jr. This guy is an undrafted free agent out of the University of Cincinnati. Came on last year in a limited role as the starting linebacker next to Jordan Hicks. He was crushing it during the offseason. He was a player that, he was quote unquote going to be designated as the green dot wearer, aka the defensive play caller on the field. Blake Cashman had something to say about that, but Blake Cashman is not going to be playing tomorrow night, which means it's going to be all Ivan Pace Jr. At the line of scrimmage and patrolling the middle of the field as well. I mean, it doesn't get much easier than a hit, insert into starting roster Ivan Pace, does it, JT?
No, I absolutely freaking love that play. I love what you said there. if he's projected for a lower total than somebody else in your league, just don't believe it. Just play him. Play him. I'm telling you what, I was just looking it up because I was thinking about this earlier, and he's not on the list. Oh, I gotta look. He's not on the list of DraftKings. I was like, I want to figure out what his over under tackle assist total is, because it's going in my same game parlay tomorrow. It's absolutely going to. I think he's going to go over. I almost don't even care what they put it as. I think he's going over. So he's not right now. I'm going to see if it's in the morning. He's not on the DK, but I might have to check FanDuel here in a little bit. That's definitely one I'm on. I love that pick. I loved Ivan Pace coming the year. I was kind of upset when Cashman took the green dot and kind of took over his spot, because I was like, oh man, I picked up Pace in so many dynasty leagues last year because I liked him. I heard good things about him early on. I either got him like at the very beginning of the year or like early part of the season. He's one of those guys. If he's getting the snap share, it's almost always worth playing him. Almost always, because when he gets snap share, he performs. So I love that pick. I think it's a great move. He's gonna be the guy. Without Cashman, he is the guy. They don't have anybody else to challenge him for snaps.
While I step away for a second, why don't you tell the folks your play at linebacker this week?
Yeah, so my play at linebacker this week, he's a guy that people have been, high on when he came out as a rookie. People really got a little upset with him, kind of started fading him. But I'm back on him. He's played really well lately, and that is Nakobe Dean, linebacker, Philadelphia Eagles. Monster week last week against the Giants, 25.8 points. He got 2 sacks. His first 2 of the season, he added 11 tackles. Just unbelievable performance. One of the top scorers in all of Fantasy Pro scoring with 25.8. And not only that big game, but he has been surprisingly consistent for the Eagles this year. Dean has double-digit fantasy points in Fantasy Pro scoring in all but one game this year, and he's playing a consistent 95% snap share. And now the biggest knock against Dean coming into this season and pretty much for his career he has been insanely injury prone. It's like you can't count him being on the field. You don't know if other guys are going to steal snap share just because he's hurt. And I think it's a little unfair for him this year. I think people were really high on him coming out of Georgia. He looked great there. People got so upset with him, they kind of forgot about him or just kind of like got rid of him. He has actually been very, very consistent this year for IDP purposes. He's a guy that I wanted to highlight because he should be in your lineup every week. He really should. If you have Nakobe Dean, unless you are just stacked up and down your roster at linebacker, he's a guy you should be playing, and you shouldn't have to think about it, really. As long as he's healthy, you should be playing him.
Yep. Co-sign 100%. It's almost like you and I, we talk about this before the show starts and we do our research, and it's like, oh my God, we piece it together. That's amazing. Isn't that a coincidence, JT?
Crazy how that happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to a player that rhymes with Dean, and that's Patrick Queen for my fade. Rostered in 58% on Sleeper. Fantasy Pro scoring. The linebacker is 60 with an average of 8.8 points per game. Let's face it. Aside from like 2 or 3 seasons when Roquan Smith when he was traded from the Bears to the Ravens, Patrick Queen was always kind of like a fantasy disappointment. And then all of a sudden Roquan shows up, and then all of a sudden things start clicking, and it's like, holy crap, this is one of the best, linebacker tandems in fantasy football. And then Queen becomes a free agent. He goes to Pittsburgh, and it's like Landon Roberts is not getting in my way. At the time, Peyton Wilson was not drafted there yet. And everybody's thinking Patrick Queen, he's going to get, he's going to get that opportunity, and he's going to carry over from what he did in Baltimore to Pittsburgh. And it has just been not working out that way. on the season, he has a tackle rate of 11.1%. Okay, so that's again looking into the number of tackles he plays per snap. Okay, here's the thing. Okay, missed tackle rate, and it is what it sounds like, folks. Like how often per snap he's missing a tackle. Okay, he has a missed tackle rate of 17.5%. So he's literally missing more tackles than he is making. This week, the Steelers face the Giants on Monday Night Football. The Giants have allowed on season the third fewest fantasy points to the linebacker position. I got to be honest with you. I see this more as an opportunity for Wilson to kind of like get more snaps here for Pittsburgh than I do Queen taking advantage of the opportunities he's been given so far for the Steelers. And I think it's only a matter of time before Wilson kind of like takes over the spot there for Landon Roberts. And once that happens, then you're telling me it's going to be Wilson versus Queen for who's going to get the most snaps and be the most productive linebacker. Give me the rookie. But for this week, I'm all out on Patrick Queen.
Yeah, so I'm going to go in a little mini diatribe about the Steelers here, which you knew was going to happen when you brought up Patrick Queen. He was my favorite signing the offseason. I was begging as a Steelers fan for them to sign Patrick Queen. I didn't think it was going to happen. When it came out they were going to get him, I was like, this is exactly what the Steelers needed. I still like Patrick Queen, so I will say that I still like Patrick Queen. I like him as a player. I still think he's good for the Steelers. I still think it was a good signing, but he's been disappointing IDP-wise. He's been real disappointing. I'm not sure if he just doesn't understand the Steelers system quite yet or what's happening. The missed tackle rate, he is just not in good positions a lot. Like if you go back and watch a lot of their film, watch a lot of their games, it's like he missed a lot of tackles because he's not in the right spot. He's like sprinting and diving at guys all the time. It's very rare that he is like coming up, boom, filling the gap, making the tackle. It's like, oh, he went this way. Oh, now I'm diving at a guy and trying to make a tackle. Right. I'm not sure what's happening there. I don't know if he just doesn't understand the concept, if he's misreading plays. I don't know what's going on, but it's frustrating. It's real frustrating. Peyton Wilson, if he stays healthy, I thought he was one of the steals of the draft. I really did. I mean, the guy's an absolute stud. To get him in the third round, if it wasn't for the injury history, I mean, this guy goes late first, early second round. I really think he probably, if it wasn't for the injury history, would have been the number one linebacker drafted in the draft last year. I really believe it. If you watch his film at NC State, he was just an absolute beast. He won every award you could win in college. So like him being a third round linebacker, people are like, oh, kind of came out of nowhere. I'm like, not really. I'm like, he was only a third rounder because of the injury history. If you looked at his pedigree and everything he did in college, he was more accomplished than any linebacker in the draft last year, outside of Junior Colson winning a national championship with Michigan. And Junior Colson didn't win all the awards that Peyton Wilson won. Peyton Wilson was the best linebacker in the draft last year, and he's showing that right now. I think he's going to start taking over more of the passing down duties. So I think when they go like dime defense, all that with one linebacker, I think Wilson's going to slowly but surely take those snaps away from Queen. He's already taken some Roberts snaps away. And here's the thing. Roberts is like that dude that just puts his head down and freaking just goes. He's awesome against the run. So he's going to continue to get snaps just because he's such a good run linebacker. He's not going to play in a lot of other situations. It's just, that's who he is. He's great for what he does, but he's just not in this type of league. I mean, if you take Alonzo Roberts right now and you put him in 1995 NFL, I mean, the guy is an absolute beast where everyone's running the ball straight ahead, helmet on helmet. Orlando Roberts is absolutely unreal. This day and age, you got to play in space. You got to play the pass. He's just not good at those things. This is not him. It's just not him. So I I like Queen as a player. I think he's going to hopefully improve for the Steelers, but IDP purposes, it has not been pretty this year. And I have him in a lot of leagues. And every week I look at him and I'm like, do I sit him this week? Do I play him? Is he going to break out? Am I going to get the same I've already seen the last 3 weeks, or do I stick with him? So I understand anybody that has him that's having that like thought process every week, because I do the same thing. I literally do the same thing.
Before we get to your fate at the linebacker position, I want to shout out to like all y'all watching, because when we started the show, we were at 1,235 subscribers on YouTube. We've gone up 10 subscribers since we started Shoot the Gap. So,
bam, way to go, dude! This is a great group. We got a great group tonight. We started with like 8 people. We got started like 8 people, and then we're getting the groups. Hey, dude, we're getting a lot of questions. I love the questions. So it's taking me a second to get to you guys. I apologize. I just keep them coming. I'm trying to answer and listen to Jorge at the same time. Try to do both. So yeah, keep the questions coming. I'm trying to jump in there and answer them as quickly as I possibly can without leaving Jorge hanging and repeating himself 100% to me. All the time.
We'll play the repeater game. It's fine. I like it. All right. Really quickly before we get to more of the questions on the chat, JT, who is your fade at the linebacker position this week?
So my fade this week, and I like this guy, but man, I think me and a lot of other people thought he was going to really step up this year, and he's just been very blah. I mean, just blah. And that is Jelani Tavai from the Patriots. He showed some flashes last year. If you needed him in a deep league, he saved me in a couple leagues where I just had injuries mounting at linebacker. I need someone to play. He saved me in a couple leagues last year. I came in with high expectations, and then when Bentley went out with the injury, I'm like, okay, he's going to shine. He's going to take over. He's going to make all these plays. Just hasn't happened. He's really struggled to consistently put up numbers. He has one double-digit scoring performance this year in Fantasy Pro scoring, and that was in week 3. 1. And it's not like he's been at like 9.5, 9.9. He's been at like 3.5 points. 4 points. He just has not consistently got you points. At this point, he's like a flex play, like linebacker fill-in. If you like are in a league that starts like 3 linebackers and you got guys hurt or you have guys on bye, at this point, he's the complete opposite for me of Dean. And I have both these guys on one roster in one deep league. At the beginning of the year, I was like, who do I start, Dean or Tavai? Every week, I was like, oh, it's close. It's not close anymore. You're starting Dean every week. Tavai is the only if you have to. Are you playing him? He just is not getting you any peripherals, no sacks, no forced fumbles, no fumble recovers, no passes defense. And he just, even the tackles he's giving you are a lot of assists. He's not even getting solos. So, and they're down in a lot of games. Teams are going to run against him, which means you're like, okay, he's going to get us tackles because teams are going to pound the rock. He's still, even in this situation, he's still not getting tackles. I'm starting to lose hope that he's going to be anything more than just a bench player that's a flex bye week fill-in going forward.
I mean, it's hard to argue. Like, I don't think a lot of people, I shouldn't say, no, I'll say it. I don't think a lot of people imagine Keon White to be the stud defensive lineman or defensive player for the Patriots heading into this year, especially given the opportunity we knew Jelani Tavai was going to get. But I'm with you, man. Like at a certain point, you got to perform, you got to produce. Opportunity can only take you so far, and it just has not been working for him so far this season. Tarzan X with the whoop whoop are getting 10 subscribers over the course of this show. Charlene Erickson, love your support, Charlene. Always do, each and every week on all the Fantasy and Frame shows. You guys are awesome. You know what? You all are awesome. Thank you very much for tuning in. Let's get to our defensive back plays and fades. I'll start with my play. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's going to mention this player amongst everybody in the IDP community, but it feels damn good to recommend this player given the history. And that's he's rostered in 0% of leagues, however, on Sleeper, which I find just utterly ridiculous. Because he is a defensive back 18 in Fantasy Pro scoring in points per game with an average of 11.2. Damar Hamlin. I hope I didn't wake the baby. Let's give it up for Damar Hamlin. Like literally, this guy has been playing all over the field. You know, what's one of the things you like to talk about when it comes to defensive backs or fantasy? Well, do they play a lot of box snap percentages? Yes. That's a good thing because you want them to be like the de facto linebackers helping out and run support. Do they play in slot coverage? Well, you know, do you want them to play in slot coverage? Yeah, because, you know, the slot corners and the slot coverage defensive backs are often targeted, you know, more so than the deep, you know, free safeties. But does he play free safety? Does he make plays on the ball while they're being thrown down the field? Well, you know, you kind of want those players as well. He is basically a combination of all those different factors. So what am I trying to say here? Because I know that was a horrible way of describing it. Last week, he led all safeties in every single major snap category for the Buffalo Bills last week. He had 34.8% of the box snaps, more box snap percentage, higher box snap percentage than any other Bills safety. 50.7% of free safety snaps, again, more than any other safety on the Bills. 8.7% of snaps at slot. He had 5 total tackles, a pass defense, and an interception. Like, remember when we were talking about Devin Witherspoon, JT, and even though he was a corner, like the fact that he played everywhere, like made him fantasy viable, not just for cornerback specific leagues, but also the point could have been made that he could be good for defensive back leagues. Remember we were talking about Devin Witherspoon?
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Damar Hamlin is like that, but he's a safety, and that's even better. You know, and this week going against the Seahawks, a team that allows the most fantasy points using Fantasy Pro scoring to the defensive back position, I wouldn't be surprised if both Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin had decent starts for fantasy managers. But if I had to pick the one, give me the one that's been the more dominant producing safety, and which should be a really, really good matchup for him against the Seattle Seahawks this week.
Yeah, I love it. I have Hamlin in that same league I was just talking about that I have Dean and Jelani Devai. I picked him up maybe week 3 or 4. I had a couple safety injuries, needing to fill some guys in. Picked him up, and he has been nothing but solid since. He's been really good. You know, they kind of switched over that safety group there for the Bills with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde leaving, and he stepped in and played really, really well this year. I mean, he went from like just a really good feel-good story to like he's playing ball this year. I mean, he is balling out. He is a legit good player this year. And you're seeing what you saw from him in that really short time as a rookie where he got in the starting lineup and really was playing well. You're seeing that this season with him.
No, 100%. Who's your play at defensive back this week?
So my guy I'm putting out there, and I know I've talked about him a couple times in some of the Plays and Fades articles, but I felt like I needed to bring him up again. And my play is Deshaun Elliott from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Really nice signing for Miami. Everyone knew they needed a strong safety. They needed a box safety. They signed him. I was a big like, man, let's get Justin Simmons guy. And then they signed Elliott. I was like, oh, that might actually be a better fit. And I am so glad that they signed him as a Steelers. He has been fantastic. He's been in double digits in Fantasy Pro scoring in every week but one this season. Just been very, very consistently good. He's averaging 12.4 fantasy points per game. He's been all over the field. When you watch games, you see him, number 20. He's all over the place. He's been playing. He is literally doing everything that everyone who drafted Finka Fitzpatrick was hoping that he would do. That's what Deshaun Elliott's doing this year. He is giving you the Minka play. He's a guy that's like making tackles, knocking down passes. He's been very good for a box safety. He's been very good in pass coverage. He has just been really solid, and he was a guy that was all over waiver wires. at the beginning of this season. I mean, I picked him up in so many leagues, and I'm a Steelers fan, so I usually own just an insane amount of Steelers players because it's just I can't help myself. I just keep picking him up. I didn't have him anywhere, and I went and got him in like 4 or 5 different IDP leagues that he was just sitting on waivers a couple weeks into the season, and he is not disappointed. He's basically, for me, and like, I almost don't know how you don't start him every week. I basically, the leagues I have him, I'm playing him every week now because he's been that consistent.
No, I hear you. We saw the play he had last week, for against the Jets. Just the dude is, I think there was one he was sent on a blitz and got to Aaron Rodgers. Like, they're using him in multiple facets on that defense. It is quite impressive to see him coming over from Miami and just what he's been doing for Pittsburgh this year. Going to the fade at defensive back. Again, these sleeper roster percentages for defensive players seem a little suspect.
Here's also, I think, why it's low, and I'll have to be honest with you. I'm in quite a few sleeper IDP leagues, and I'm in a way more my fantasy league IDP leagues. Most of the sleeper leagues I'm in are much smaller rosters and less starting spots. So I'm in a lot of leagues where on sleeper where they only have like somewhere between 4 and 6 starting spots total. So it's like 2 D linemen, 2 linebackers, 2 DBs, and small benches. So you only have like maybe 3 or 4 defensive guys on your bench because you have to even it out with your offensive players at the same time, and the benches aren't deep. Because I find myself constantly going, I can't drop that guy, can I? Right. I need a guy for this bye week, or I have an injury. I can't drop him, can I? And I'm like, I got to. Like, there's no, I don't have enough bench spots where my fantasy leagues are usually literally, if I am an IDP league, they're 40 to 53 man rosters. They're huge rosters where I have a bunch of backups. So I think that also affects it. Plus, there is no sleeper does not have real roster spots. So there is no defensive tackle. There is no cornerback. It's all D line, all linebacker, all DB. So I think that also affects a lot of these numbers. I think it skews them a little bit in that respect.
I would love for somebody from Sleeper to come on, shoot the gap, and give the people. We could do a special episode, outside of our weekly one, just to talk about IDP and give the IDP community more of a voice to Sleeper and kind of say, hey, here are our thoughts and why are you guys not doing this versus what could you offer us? That would be something that I think a lot of you would enjoy, seeing as how a lot of us out there in the fantasy space play on Sleeper. But that notwithstanding, according to Sleeper and Redraft leagues, Xavier Woods is rostered in 0%. He is the DB31 in Fantasy Pros points per game, going against the Denver Broncos team that is allowing, per Fantasy Six Pack, the third fewest fantasy points to the defensive back position. Here's the thing. Xavier Woods has had good weeks. He's had some, less than good weeks. We like to call those bad, and somewhere in between. The problem with him this week, and the reason why I would have you say start a DeMar Hamlin over Xavier Woods, is because while he has average tackle numbers, he doesn't make a lot of the high impact plays consistently that you want. And these tackle numbers are not high volume tackle numbers either. And it's not so much that, I want to say sit him if he's your best defensive back or only available defensive back here. I will say fade expectations for him this week against Denver. If you have to start him, you have to start him, right? That's why I hate saying this player is a start, this one's a sit. It's all subjective to what your roster is. You may not have a choice to start him. And I'm not going to tell you to sit him for somebody who may be of lesser quality or value on your waiver wire, but I can tell you that, hey, this is somebody that you may have no choice to play, but temporary expectations or fade those expectations, which is why I think, which is why I'm saying he is a fade for me this week at defensive back.
Before we get into my fade, Jamie came up with a really good point here. He said small bench spots like I never use DBs on my bench, and I like to get the DB LB combos or the LB D line combos. I absolutely agree with Jamie. When I draft on sleeper leagues, I draft differently because the outside linebackers on my fantasy league, they are considered defensive ends. They basically make any edge rusher a defensive end. I totally draft different on sleeper because I can get like a TJ Watt as a linebacker slash D end or D line on sleeper, where on my fantasy league he's just considered a D end. And then you can get those kind of tweener box safeties that can be linebackers or DBs. I love those. So I'm with Jamie on this on sleeper. I am a sucker for the double combo. If you can get guys that are edge rushers that count as D line or linebacker, I want those guys because then when bye weeks happen, I can play them in either spot to kind of save me. And because the benches are shallower, I'm the same way. If I'm not going to carry someone, it's backup defensive backs. I will just go, hey, I'll drop that guy and pick up a new guy next week if I'm low on roster spots. So that's a great point Jamie made when it comes to sleeper.
Got Will in the chat saying, what about Quentin Lake with the Rams linebacker out? He likes him tomorrow. What we saw last week is kind of interesting. And we saw Cameron Curl lead all safeties and box snap percentages with 26.6%. Both him and Quentin Lake played 100% of the defensive snap share. The real key thing here is Quentin Lake played deep safety 73.4% of the time. And now, so what does that tell me? Intuitively, that tells me, okay, they're playing him farther away from the ball, which last I checked, when you're trying to make plays on the ball, you want to be close to the ball. So I don't know if I'm so high on him this week, to be honest with you. That 74% free safety snap percentage, that's a little off-putting. And we saw Cameron Curl, and we've seen Cameron Curl in recent weeks just really assert himself as the safety for IDP that you really do want on your roster.
Yeah, so this has kind of been a fluid situation for the Rams. Lake, I like Lake a ton. I picked him up in a lot of leagues early on in the season, and I've been playing him consistently week to week. They were really kind of rotating Curl and Lake between box safety. They were both like playing about 45 to 50% of the time at box safety. And really in the last week or two has Lake really kind of moved back to that deep safety. So early in the year, he was playing a ton more slot corner, playing a lot more box safety. He was right in those prime positions you wanted, as a lot of times the Rams play two kind of box safeties. They play a lot of times because they only play a lot. They play a super high percentage of one linebacker sets, a lot. And those guys are kind of both kind of playing linebacker roles for some reason. And I don't know, scheme wise, or they just decided that's what they want to do. They've started to move Lake to deep safety. Like you said, last week was by far the highest percentage of deep safety he's played all year at 73%, because he played 14% at box and 12% at slot. And those numbers were definitely more in the 25 to 30% range the last couple of weeks. So yeah, I still like Lake, but those numbers definitely worry me a bit.
All right, let's finish up our plays and fades for the week. JT, who is your fade at defensive back?
Well, so I talked about a Steeler and how much I liked him. I have to go and talk about a Steeler I don't like. And I have to go Beanie Bishop, the slot corner. He's undrafted free agent. He's kind of played that spot because they didn't really have anybody else. He has not been very good. If you watch that Jets game, you're like, man, this guy's great with the 2 interceptions. He had, I think it was 5 or 6 tackles in the game. I think he had 6 tackles, 2 interceptions, 2 passes defense. He had 23.8 fantasy points. So you're like, man, Beanie Bishop, I should pick this guy up. Not so fast. Coming into the game, he had 24.1 fantasy points. So less than one total point in every game this season leading up to this game than what he had last week. The picks were great. All that was great, but he has not been consistent. He has not been good. Don't go out there and think all of a sudden that Beanie Bishop's a guy you need to get and play, because he's not. He last week was one of those absolute anomaly weeks, and I will not forget him. I complained about this, and I have to bitch one more time about it. I had a 3-pick parlay, TD parlay, George Pickens, Garrett Wilson, and Steelers defense to all score a touchdown, plus 5,200. And I lost it on Beanie Bishop getting tackled from behind by Devontae Adams, who ran him down and tackled him on the 1-yard line on an interception return. He stretches the ball out and gets in, $5,200 play, and I hit a win, and I lose it because Beanie Bishop gets tackled from behind. I've never seen Devontae Adams try that hard in my life. I don't know where it came from. I actually had to replay it. I was like, is that set? I was like, Devontae Adams ran him down, came all the way back to make that tackle. It was brutal. He had 3 guys in front of him. They're like, they had no one to block. He should have walked it in the end zone, and he got pulled down from behind by Devontae Adams for no reason. Cost me a $5,200 parlay win. So that's also why he's on my fade. That's why he's on my fade list. Beanie Bishop. You got to score the touchdown. You got to smell the end zone. You got to get in.
Wow, there's just so much to take away from that. F you, Beanie Bishop. Redeem yourself.
Thank you for doing that. Gave the Steelers a win, but damn it, you got to get in the end zone.
Yeah, money talks there, Beanie. Come on. All right, that wraps up our plays and fades for the week. That wraps up Money in Mirage, news and notes. There's only one thing left, and I'm kind of hungry. I am actually rather hungry. I only had one slice of pizza for dinner, so I'm about to go crush some pizza and get this baby's bottle warmed up for a midnight feed in a little bit. But anywho, sack lunch. For those who don't know and who are new to the segment, we basically give you a player that we think is going to get you a sack. Not a half sack. None of that. Full sack. Going to get you at least one sack.
We don't do half sacks here.
Exactly.
Give me all or nothing, right, Jorge? Give me all or nothing.
That is my MO. Absolutely. Okay, so let me give you my guy for the week. Despite, I think this was his first week playing, if memory serves me correctly, coming off of injury. Azeez Ojulari. I slipped and mentioned his name earlier this week, earlier in today's show. Despite not playing many games, I think this was his first game back, if memory serves me correctly. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But his first game back, he led the team in defensive snap share amongst edge rushers with 83.3%. The next guy was Brian Burns with 65.2%. He will be going again. He plays for the New York Giants, by the way, edge rusher New York Giants. He should be lining up against Broderick Jones of the aforementioned Pittsburgh Steelers. Jones is 10th amongst all NFL offensive tackles with 17 total pressures allowed, and is first among all NFL offensive tackles with sacks allowed with 6. So he gives up a lot of pressures, and he's given up the most sacks. That's no bueno for Russell Wilson. It's great for Azeez Ojulari, who, like I said, he didn't have the greatest performance last week in terms of efficiency metrics, but he's given that opportunity. I was blown away by that. 83.3%. That is crazy. That just goes to tell you what the Giants defensive coaches think about him. And if he gets that opportunity again, I think it's only a matter of time. And what better matchup than Broderick Jones this week to kind of capitalize and get that sack on Russell Wilson. So give me Azeez Ojulari.
The second I saw you going to do this, I was like, oh, that's such a good pick. It's such a good pick. Ojulari has three sacks in the last 2 games on top of that. So he's on a heater. And if you've watched Broderick Jones this year, it will make you sick. He is awful. I mean, he's awful. His move is he puts out one arm, hits the guy's shoulder pad, and stops, and just lets guys run right by him. I mean, literally. He arm punches, stops moving his feet, and lets the guy run right by. I mean, it's insane that he was a first round pick at this point. He has to be the worst tackle in the league right now. I mean, I don't know what his PFF grade is, but it's got to be horrible. I mean, my cousin is a Steelers fan, a couple other Steelers fans. I get more texts about Broderick Jones during Steelers games than anyone else. Just nonstop, like, what does he do? Oh my God, he's just watching guys. He's just standing around looking. It's so bad. It's so bad. I mean, I'm really hoping, and I don't want anybody to hurt. I hope he's really hurt because he can't possibly be playing this bad on purpose. It's so bad. I mean, it is ungodly to watch. When you put that up there, I was like, oh, that's like the smartest play ever for sack lunch. I was like, God, there's absolutely no way that he doesn't get a sack going against Jones.
He reminds me of like that meme where the guy is the bouncer at the concert, and people come up to him and he's like supposed to be patting them down, but he's just like, doing the air motions, and then your next person can come in. Those in the chat, you know what I'm talking about. Those who are watching, you know what I'm talking about. Anywho, JT, who is your sack lunch for this week?
So a guy that, we all know who he is. He hasn't had quite the year he had last year, but I'm going with Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack doesn't have the sack numbers at this point in the year, but he's got the Saints this week. The New Orleans Saints. It's still questionable who's going to start at QB. It looks like it's going to be Spencer Rattler. And if it's Spencer Rattler, I absolutely want Khalil Mack. Here is why. The Saints have given up 16 sacks this year. 16 already. In 2 Spencer Rattler starts, 11. 11 sacks. 11. 5 and 6 in back-to-back weeks. The rush has been great for him. Like, I mean, he just hasn't got the sacks yet. He's been there. Khalil Mack is playing over 80% of snap shares. 91.9% was his pass rush grade last week. That was his top pass rush grade of the season since week 3, which was the last time he had a sack. He's due. 22.7% win rate, 18.2% pressure rate. There was no reason he shouldn't have a sack last week. The only reason he didn't is Kyler Murray is pretty good about getting away and out of the pocket. Spencer Rattler is not. 11 sacks in 2 games for Spencer Rattler. I think Khalil Mack gets home. I think Khalil Mack might get home more than once this week against the Saints.
Oh, we got to figure out if somebody scores more sacks. What does that mean for our
dude? We could be a sack off. This could be like who's gonna get 3 sacks to 2 sacks. We got ourselves an official sack off this week.
I love it. That it sounds so dirty, but it sounds
terrible.
Also so.
As soon as I said it, I was like, I probably should have said that.
I love it. I love it. All right, folks, that's going to wrap us up here on Shoot the Gap. Thank you very much for tuning in. I have on my rundown everything that we're doing, but let's face it, folks, fantasyandframes.com. Okay, Echo, that just kind of, my Alexa just went off for some reason. Anyhow, let's try that again. A lot of stuff that we do here at Fantasy and Frames, whether it's college fantasy football, whether it's college betting, whether it's, obviously we do NFL fantasy football, NFL betting. We cover everything from Dynasty, Redraft, IDP, DraftKings, DFS. We have our Waiver Wire show. We have our Sunday morning kickoff show where we're on from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. covering every single game, all the fantasy relevant players on both sides of the ball, plus answering your questions for DFS as well as for your starts and sits or plays and fades. Just, follow us wherever we're at. Like I said, TikTok, we really appreciate there. YouTube, really appreciate Twitter/X. Really, really appreciate just, all you all who tune in and who support us here at Fantasy and Frames. It really does mean the world to us. And I tell everybody, I could be doing this, and I think I speak for all of us here, but we could be doing this, putting in tons of hours, which we already do, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of research. And even if it was just one person saying, you really helped me out, I really appreciate your content, it really made my year. That means the world to us. And the fact that we have so many of you supporting us out there, that just goes to show you just how much we appreciate your support and continued support. Before we get out of here, though, again, every single video show that we have, you can find under the Fantasy and Frames podcast. It's all labeled show by show. Wherever you listen to podcasts, download and subscribe to the Fantasy and Frames podcast. And yeah, so, JT, anything you want to plug before we get out of here tonight?
Yeah, just check me out at JT Orange on Twitter, or check out my show. I'm the host of the Stew with JT Brew on Fantasy in Frames. Tuesday night is a college football betting show. We also do the hockey show Around the Ice on Tuesday nights. So if you're into hockey, check that out. We talk fantasy hockey. We talk, what's going on in the real life hockey. And hey, if you like to bet, we throw out our bets live on the air and bets we like coming up, things we do. So check that out. And then usually Thursday or Friday, my NFL bet show comes out. I'll give you the JT Parlay play of the day, my favorite TD parlay, and my favorite teaser of the week. So I'll throw that one out to you. Hopefully get that to you guys tomorrow night. So yeah, just check all that out and follow the Stew with JT Brew at Fantasy in Frames.
Tarzan X, thanks for your hard work. Mahalo. Mahalo to you. That's the first time somebody has ever wished me mahalo. That thank you. Anywho, for JT, I'm Jorge. We'll be back next week on Shoot the Gap. And good luck this week in all of your IDP Fantasy Football leagues. Later, folks.